The political decisions people make will affect many lives. Many people see politics as the government and the laws being made. While that is true, it's way more complicated than that.
I don't know what type of procedure is this.
Some of you may be aspiring to positions of leadership in the political arena.
And I accepted full responsibility.
But the question is, why do you want to lead?
It has everything to do with you. Every law that is made will impact many. Sometimes the decisions do affect people negatively. Therefore, it's very important to note that every vote that you cast will either break or make people. Politics with GA brings you the latest political news as well as insight and analysis as we discuss the most important issues that matter. The travails of the immediate past governor of Ekiti State has continued as it moved from Government House to EFCC custody. Hello and welcome to Politics with GA. Mr. Adele Fayose was on Monday arraigned on an 11-count charge bordering on money laundering, abuse of public office, criminal breach of trust and stealing up to the tune of 4.7 billion naira by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The former governor pleaded not guilty to all the charges, and the prosecution counsel, Mr. Rotimi Oyedepo, prayed to the court to remand the defendant in prison custody pending determination of his bail application. But the former governor's counsel, Mr. Kalu Agabi, a senior advocate of Nigeria, urged the court to remand him in EFCC custody, pointing out that the bail application has been filed. After entertaining submissions of counsels, Justice Mojisola Olatoregun ordered that Fayose be remanded in EFCC custody and adjourned the case till Wednesday. The anti-graft agency is accusing Mr. Fayose of benefiting from about $5 billion funds allocated to the office of the National Security Advisor during the previous administration of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. The national chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, on Sunday alleged that conservatives within the party are ganging up to pass a vote of no confidence against him. In a statement by his press secretary, Mr. Simon Ebegulem, the APC national chairman said his sin was his refusal to allow continued impunity and circumvention of due process being perpetuated in some states. He said he was not surprised by the gang-up, as he never had the illusion that the process of reforming the party was going to be an easy one. Since he emerged chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole has been at loggerheads with some members of the party. A senator representing Kaduna Central Senatorial District, Senator Shehu Sani, has dumped the All Progressive Congress. The senator sent his resignation letter to the chairman of Ward 6, Tudunwada North Local Government in Kaduna State. The APC had reportedly given the outspoken senator an automatic ticket during its primaries in Kaduna. The decision of the party leadership did not go well with the governor, Governor Nasir El-Rufai, who labeled the senator a traitor. Another primary election was held in which the governor's aide, Mr. Uba Sani, emerged the winner. In his reaction, Senator Shehu Sani dismissed the result and described the primary election as illegal. Following the dust raised as a result of the primary that saw El-Rufai's aide emerging as winner, the APC leadership issued a statement which was signed by its acting spokesman, Yusuf Nabena, declaring Senator Shehu Sani as the only candidate of the party for the 2019 Kaduna Central Senatorial District. Also on Wednesday, the 17th of October, the APC National Appeal Committee, set up by Comrade Oshiomhole, upheld Senator Shehu Sani's candidacy. The committee was inaugurated to investigate complaints arising from various APC state primaries across the country. A President Muhammadu Buhari support group, Re-elect Buhari movement, has described the former President Olusegun Obasanjo's endorsement of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's presidential bid for president as meaningless. The RBM also frowned at the presence of top clergymen, Bishop David Oyedepo, Bishop Matthew Kuka and Sheikh Abubakar Gumi at the endorsement in Abeokuta penultimate week. The group, in a statement by its convener, Mr. Emmanuel Etim, noted that the endorsement would count for nothing in the next general elections. But the big question is, do former President Olusegun's endorsements really count for nothing? Former President Goodluck Jonathan once described the former President Obasanjo as the boss of all bosses in Nigerian political space. He said any politician who ignores Obasanjo does it at its own peril. It should be recalled that former President Olusegun Obasanjo endorsed former President Goodluck Jonathan and he won the elections. He also endorsed former President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua. He won the elections. And last time out in 2015, he endorsed the current president, President Muhammadu Buhari, and won the elections. The question is, would you dismiss former President Olusegun Obasanjo's endorsement as meaningless? The leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has vowed not to return to the Federal High Court in Abuja, where he will stand in trial before he left the country. The federal government had charged him with treason, but Justice Binta Nyako granted him bail after 18 months in detention. Nnamdi Kanu had flouted all the terms of the bail before the military invaded his Abia residence on September 14, 2017. He fled afterwards and resurfaced in Jerusalem on Friday. In a broadcast via Radio Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu boasted that the Nigerian court lacked the capacity to try him. He said the judge asked his sureties to produce him should have asked the army why they invaded his residence. Mr. Kanu went on to say the Nigerian court is a kangaroo court. I did not jump bail. I left because the court failed to protect me. I shall not be honoring the court. I cannot be tried by a court I do not recognize. The zoo called Nigeria cannot jail me. I will fight till the last day. Till now, Justice Binta Nyako's court has not yet held a hearing about the circumstances that led to the Nigerian army to come to my house to kill 28 people. Only upon a clear pronouncement of the intentions of that court, which I suggest to them should be free, will this very case move forward. The Nigerian army had in the past denied killing anyone in Nnamdi Kanu's house. The Independent National Electoral Commission has said it will publish the list of nominated candidates for the presidential and governorship candidates on January 17, 2019. The electoral body has made good its threat last week by refusing to extend the date of the submission of the list of nominated candidates by registered political parties. The Chief Press Secretary to INEC Chairman, Mr. Rotimi Onyekomi, said the Commission is strictly following the timetable ahead of the 2019 general elections. He said the Commission is strictly following the timetable and schedule of activities for the 2019 general elections. Accordingly, the list of nominated candidates will be published as follows: Presidential and National Assembly, January 17, 2019, Governorship and State of Assembly, January 31st, 2019. Meanwhile, the INEC in a statement on Sunday said 89 out of 91 registered political parties will field candidates for various positions in next year's general elections. And on the foreign scene, Britain, France and Germany have urged the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to provide facts for their widespread report on the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, when Turkey promised to reveal the bare truth about it earlier this month at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, where it happened. In an attempt to remove the growing doubts about the credibility of the Saudi position, Foreign Minister Abdel Al-Jubeir told Fox News on Sunday that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman knew nothing of a plan to kill Mr. Khashoggi and that his whereabouts remained a riddle for Riyadh. Western governments have increasingly rejected the often conflicting reports of the journalist's death that have been made available so far. In a joint statement released on Sunday, the United Kingdom, France and Germany said there's an urgent need to clarify what happened exactly on the 2nd of October beyond the hypotheses that were raised in the Saudi investigation by facts and must be supported to be considered credible. British Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt spoke with Al-Jubeir on Sunday to support the British belief that cannot justify murder, claiming that the statement is not entirely credible. A source from the Foreign Office says ultimately the strength of our response depends on the extent to which the truth is found and our confidence that it will never happen again. In the strongest remarks to date on this matter, U.S. President Donald Trump accused Saudi Arabia of lying about the death of Khashoggi when pressure was exerted on his government to improve his position. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan promised to fully publicize the Turkish investigation into the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And in Cameroon, Mr. Paul Biya, at the age of 85, Africa's oldest head of state, was re-elected by a landslide according to official results. Opposition has called for a rerun of the presidential elections, which were rejected by the Constitutional Council last week. Riot police were deployed on Sunday to major cities of Yaoundé and Douala in case of opposition protests. Cameroon's two English-speaking provinces have been hit by more than a year of violent protests and attacks by separatists, which have left hundreds dead. Mr. Paul Biya has not yet officially been declared the winner, but results have been announced from all of the country's 10 regions. He gained 75% of the votes in the 7 regions and only lost 1. 2 days before the results were announced, Africa's longest-serving President Teodoro Obiang Nguema of neighboring Equatorial Guinea congratulated Mr. Biya on his win. Election observers from the African Union reported that the polls were generally peaceful, but added that most parties were not represented amongst the polling personnel. The only other group to send international monitors was the International Organization of La Francophonie, whose head urged candidates and stakeholders to do their part in preserving peace and use legal channels in any challenge to the result. Issues that matter. Thanks for joining us in Politics with GA, Mr. Emmanuel Etim.
Thank you for having me.
What do you make of the not too young to run bill after it's been signed into law? Would you say it's instrumental in your decision to run for the highest office in the land?
Well, yes, it is, because I would have had to wait for 4 or 5 more years before I could, aspire for this office. So the law has actually made it possible to come out earlier.
Why do you want to be president of Nigeria?
For many reasons, inclusive of the fact that there's never been a time like now in Nigeria for us to actually provide the people of Nigeria with transformational leadership. There's never been such a time for us actually to correct the errors of past generations, actually put Nigeria on the path of competitiveness as a member of the global community of nation states. There's never been a time for us to manage the resources of Nigeria at the level where it ensures that Nigerians' population are successful and literally move the trajectory of our development away from the hands of elites who think that, they know all, or maybe not say know all, but that the only ones who understand how Nigeria should work. They've made Nigeria complex, they've made it difficult, they've induced the people to levels of vulnerabilities that Nigerians don't even have citizenship agency or even rights themselves of their status as Nigerians. So I want to run for president, or I'm running for president because I believe I can provide that leadership, that transformational leadership. I can provide the opportunity for Nigerians to be proud again to be Nigerians and get Nigeria to work for the benefit of Nigerians.
You're a young Nigerian, and a few people have heard the name Emmanuel Etim up until this moment, and you've done one better. You're the presidential candidate. Primaries are over for the Change Nigeria Party. They say Nigeria is a very complex country, and it's very true, and I'm sure you agree with me. But why have you decided to go for the highest office in the land? Your first time out in politics. Why didn't you why don't you move closer to the people by running for state houses of assembly, for example, House of Representatives, or even the Senate, that the highest office in the land might be beyond your expertise?
Well, first, I disagree with the concept that the highest office in the land is reserved for a particular age group or a particular status of persons. Number one. Number two, I don't think that our history and context agrees with that, because even the incumbent was in office before he was 40 years old.
But it was in office as a military ruler. It's different. They seize power. It's not constitutional.
No, we're talking about the age of capacity to govern. Yeah, and around the world that disagrees with the fact. The third about it also is, well, I didn't just show up overnight. My credentials of being part of public policy making in this country, implementation, design, precedes today. It's been on for 20 years. What people are referring to as just coming up is because I was away for 10 years working for the United Nations and the African Union, doing the same things at a much more global level. Now, so coming back home is to say, listen, having sat at the center of policy making, implementation, design, financing, I realized there's a huge gap in what is happening in this country. And what is happening is that we don't have the visionary leadership that is able to get things done. Implementation of those policies we have to begin with. Domestic opportunities to finance the development of this country and putting Nigerians at the center of public policy making, of governance and of leadership. So the question around whether there is capacity to exercise is not correct. To assume that because a person is 38 years old, they cannot run government is not true. And what you're calling complexity is a lie. It's a mirage that's been created to keep a lot of people away, in fact, keep the people away from managing the issues and affairs of their own lives with their own resources.
Fantastic point there. And so many people have said, the not too young to run law is a double-edged sword. You give people the opportunity to contest, but you don't empower them, or they don't have the finances to go one ahead. Your political party, I'm not sure how much you paid for your nomination and expression of interest.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. What strategy do you have to finance this campaign?
Well, first of all,
or to raise the type of money that would make you emerge president of
Nigeria.
Republic of Nigeria?
I think the first thing here is the assumption that because people have spent money the bad way or the wasted approach.
I wouldn't say it's an assumption. It's logic.
Well, let's take the logic. People have spent money, logically, as you say, the wrong way, wastefully, that becomes the traditional way money should be spent. I don't agree. There's efficiency to how to spend money. There's reality how to spend money. And so for me, the first step is, somebody said very well on the media, he said, if you think that an older person like this or somebody, the people that are there are incapable, then put yourself forward. That's the first. The second is, if we are going to look at it from a more logical sense, we cannot continue to do the same things and expect different sets of results. We can't say these guys are thieves, they are corrupt, they are bad leaders, and yet we are debating about which of them to put back in office. And we can't say we don't have alternatives. I'm just one of the many alternatives.
You're one of 26.
Yeah, well, one of 26, but then one of the best, because I argue that I have my track record demonstrates my capacity to do what exactly I'm saying I want to do.
We'll get there as to your credentials and why you feel you're better than the other candidates. But let's stay on the question of finances. So, how do you intend to
for the
run a campaign without money? How do you?
So let's start. Which money are you talking about? Those that are already there talking about money are using Nigeria's resources. These are people who stole money from being in office before, or who are accused of doing so. That spending Nigeria's resources.
To say that.
No, I'm not saying that.
There are 26 candidates.
All the same question about money applies to the non-two big parties. Okay. The question of do you have money still applies to all of us. So the issue here is who gave them the money they are spending? What kind of businesses can we see every day? It's not Dangote contesting for presidency. What have they done to earn the money they are using to spend for the elections?
So how do you get your message across?
So I'm starting to say, first of all, that I am asking Nigerians, and I've done so. We raised over $5 million to help me, 5 million naira to help me pay for my form and the expression of interest and go through the process. And that came from Nigerians. Some Nigerians giving 360 naira around the world to ensure that this can happen. And we just need to continue to get people donating that amount of money. Number two, if you want to win an election, you have to convince people to support you. And that support begins with their contributions to the campaign. As little as $1, 360 naira, a pound can get you there. If 3 million Nigerians give me 360 naira, I have $1 billion naira to spend for my election. I don't think I need that amount of money. I'm just saying.
Now, let's talk about, you have to convince Nigerians to give you that money in the first place. They need to believe in your program. They need to know that Emmanuel Etim will do a fantastic job as president of Nigeria. Brings me to this question. What makes you think you're better than the other candidates? And why do you think you should be president of Nigeria?
I am better than the other candidate because, number one, the vision and my plans for the economy of Nigeria, for the young people in this country, for the women in this country, for the education sector, the health sector, the environment, the agricultural sector, infrastructure, beats whatever else anybody has there. None of the other candidates is actually running a campaign based on Nigeria, the Nigerian trader, the Nigerian farmer, the carpenter, the fisherman, the woman who has the pregnancy and can't give birth properly, or the ones who died from trying to do so. None of them has that kind of program for Nigeria.
have a blueprint
Oh,
and
yes.
the how to do it? Because
Of course.
politicians have a way of promising, but the how questions.
No,
the
mine is not
breakdown,
I'm not promising.
That's the difficult part.
No, I'm not promising. I have looked at different forms of financing that plan. I've looked at financial transaction tax, getting money from the capital market to fund it, expanding the tax base by up to 10% to accommodate that cost, moving a lot of young people or a lot of entrepreneurs from the informal economy and putting them part of the community to play that role. Look at alternative means of financing that will come into the economy to ensure this is happening. Ensure that foreign direct investment that focus on Nigeria's manufacturing, Nigerian exporting, not necessarily export that is based on government patronage. What Nigerians are manufacturing and exporting. Those are some of the things I'm putting on ground as part of my blueprint with clear-cut amounts of money that they can generate over 4 years. I'm coming with a 4-year plan, a 4-year budget plan to say in 4 years this is the amount of money I want to spend on this in this country. This amount of project we want to implement. This is where we're going to do it, and this is how much money government we contribute. This is how much we're going to come from public-private partnership, from private sector itself. A truly well-managed, run, localized economy.
I mean, it's too late to ask this question now because all political parties have done their primaries. But I mean, you never know. There's synergy, there's cooperation, and there's a whole crop of technocrats and politicians which you belong to. They've cut their teeth in the private sector. They have a lot of expertise, and there are quite a number of them. They're not your typical politicians that have been in the system, some as far as 1966, since the first republic. There's a school of thought that says, why don't we young Nigerians, there's a young man like you also contesting Chuke Kegu, that why don't you all come together and have a consensus candidate and say, this, we're the third force and we present this third, because right now discussions, you would be mistaken to think only 2 presidential candidates are contesting in Nigeria. So, synergy, work together and form a consensus, or do you think you could go it alone?
Well, let me say it this way. The idea of coming together and bringing up a consensus candidate doesn't just work like that. That's strategy, okay? And that strategy is based on several levels of negotiation, compromise, and building forces around that. And it's too early to have that conversation, truly. Nigerians need to understand that it's not anybody else but Buhari. That's number one. It can't be that way. Number two, the so-called 2 big political parties are not really 2 big political parties. They are 2 big parties that pay people money to support them. Then the third part of it is, even if we get to the point of deciding we need to come together, we'll get to the point. And if we really have to come together, it has to be based on comparative advantages, isn't it? So we need to still first, let's scatter the line, let's scatter the queue, isn't it? Let's scatter the ground and get everybody to reach across to Nigeria to first say there are alternatives, okay, number one. Number two, what are the heartbeats of the country? What do Nigerians want from their leadership? We need to get them to be able to say, these are the things I want from Nigerians. And the one who has a more clearer program that reaches the needs of Nigerians, that gets Nigerians out of poverty, that's the one people should be focusing on. And then based on that, we can all say, okay, you know what, Etim has that calendar, Etim has that agenda, Etim has that heartbeat, and Nigerians are responding positively to his, to his program. We will put our support behind it, but Etim, what are you going to give in return? Because these are the conditions behind it that must happen. It's not just about coming together and say we want to be, but even the Nigerians are asking us to come together. Are they just asking us to become democratic monarchs? Or are they looking for a democratic revolution that is based on the needs that they have as students, as workers, as pensioners, as mothers? What do you want from your leadership? These are the questions Nigerians should ask and not be worried about whether we are coming together or not coming together. In other words, what Nigerians are actually reinforcing is that they want a country of rulers, not a country of leaders.
Finally, Mr. Emmanuel Etim, it's less than 4 months before the presidential elections. What's your final thoughts, your assessment of INEC and preparations in general? Do you think the elections will be free and fair? And do you stand a chance to emerge the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
So let me start with the last question. Do I stand a chance? That question is dependent on what Nigerians want. If Nigerians want the same things to happen and they think that they're going to do the same things again or differently, then I will not emerge. But if Nigerians are ready for a radical transformation of our nation state, if Nigerians are ready for a new kind of experience as Nigerians, for prosperity and success, then I will emerge. That's the first first answer to your question. The second question about INEC, and it's a double-edged sword, okay? INEC, I want to think that in principle, wants to do the best for the country, but again, they're supposed to be independent. But how truly independent are they? We saw in Ikiti, we saw in Houston, we are seeing across the country. How really independent are they? I do hope, and I do think that if INEC is infiltrated, we have the opportunity to use the judiciary. And I think that the judiciary is sitting up to play its role. And in that response also to say, and I'm saying it boldly to say, that if the incumbency comes back into office, I don't think they did anything else but rig the election.
Okay.
And upon that, we're preparing.
Fantastic. Mr. Emmanuel Etim, presidential candidate, Change Nigeria Party, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on Politics with GA.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching Politics with GA. Until next time, I'm Gbenga Aborowa. The political decisions people make will affect many lives. Many people see politics as the government and the laws being made. While that is true, it's way more complicated than that.
I don't know what type of procedure is this.
Some of you may be aspiring to positions of leadership in the political arena.
And I accepted full responsibility.
But the question is, why do you want to lead?
It has everything to do with you. Every law that is made will impact many. Sometimes the decisions do affect people negatively. Therefore, it's very important to note that every vote that you cast will either break or make people. Politics with GA brings you the latest political news as well as insight and analysis as we discuss the most important issues that matter.